Hello guys, today I would like to show you the way I've weathered my container, the one that I've painted over here. I have posted the picture of this on the Independent Characters community group and I got a lot of likes, which is very nice, and I really appreciate your feedback. So I decided that when I reach, if I reach 100 likes, I'm gonna post a tutorial in English as well for you. So the techniques that I used on this container are very basic. There is no rocket science over here. The products are from AK Interactive that I'm going to show you while we paint, which ones I'm going to be using. And the application is very basic, very simple. Basically, any one of you can do that. You buy those products, you buy the special brush, which is a synthetic brush, and you go on and you more or less get the same results that I did. I have not been doing this for a long time. I'm still experiencing with some of the tools and some of the special paints that I've got in the range, and the results are very nice, I must say. So enjoy the tutorial and I see you in a bit. So as you can see here, I've got my model prepared. One of the sides that I've already painted and presented on Independent Characters community group is here. I've really gathered a lot of likes for it, so I really appreciate your feedback. So I decided that when I reach 100 likes, and I've overreached that a couple hours ago, I decided that I'm going to do a tutorial. So this is the side that we're going to be working on today. It's just painted with Contour Blue and Lothern Blue. I don't really like harsh highlights, so I just do a very subtle highlight on the panels. The skulls have been painted with gunmetal from Vallejo, and I've also used some other paints from Vallejo, but we're not going to mention these, some gold, silver and so on, so let's skip that. We need to focus on this side. This side is going to be painted with three paints actually from AK Interactive, and let's move on to the paints. So let's start with the first paint, and it's Rust Streaks. This is the paint that I'm going to be using on most of the areas on the model. Then this wash is going to be a lighter tone, just to provide some contrast to the one and variation in the rust, basically. And the third paint that we're going to be using is the crusted rust deposits that I'm going to be using only in the bottom parts of the model, so just to show that it's basically stayed there, a little bit of rust. The last bottle I need to show you is the odor thinner. This is the medium that we're going to be using to spread the paint around, the pigments around the whole model. Next is the brush. You cannot use a Kolinsky or Sable brush with these paints. What you need to use is a synthetic brush. These are mostly white, as you can see on this example. This is one of the cheap brushes that I am using. Never use your Kolinsky, your Sable, because basically the chemicals in the paints, whether it's a thinner or the paint itself, these are gonna damage your bristles, and your brushes are really gonna be ruined. Right, let's move on, and I'm gonna pick the first paint. This is gonna be which one? This one, the Rust Streaks. Obviously, shake well before using. I'm using in the bottles. I'm using the steel bowls from AK as well. These are proper agitators that are gonna move the pigment around while you shake the bottle. So let's get on with it. I open the paint and I just leave it out there. I never take too much time with the paint anyway, so I'm not too worried about it thinning down. And I just cover the areas that I want the paint, the rust, the deposit to be set on in, whichever. I just basically paint it around. I'm not really too careful. I mean, to be honest, the less careful you are and the less planned it is, the better, I think, because it sort of gives you this natural look, and it's more random, and I think it sort of suits the thing that we're doing right now. So I just move on from panel to panel, from line to line, and just cover it around with the paint. And okay, let's come back when I'm done with the whole face of the model with this paint. one more thing. While I was doing the Polish version of the tutorial, I have put a little bit too much paint in one of the spots. This was just to show you that you don't need to be very worried about that. We're just going to leave it over there for it to dry. I just even, as you can see, covered it properly, the whole panel, with more paint even. This is just to show you that this paint, this kind of painting, is very forgiving. So don't be worried about mistakes that you're going to be making. Just move on, and the results are going to amaze you in a second. The next paint I'm going to be using is Wash Light Rust. So this is just going to be used as a contrast in some of the areas, and basically I'm just going to mimic the other side that I've done. So I'm just using it to put in these areas. I don't know why, it's just the way I thought it's gonna look cool. As you can see, I'm not too worried about it mixing with the previous paint, although I'm not sure why I left it for now. Oh, there you go. So I've put it anywhere that I thought that I could use a little bit of more contrast between the blue and the brown, just to bring out more of the details. And I've just blushed it in, I think that's the word. Just put a lot of paint in there. Obviously I'm trying to be somewhat careful, but you don't need to. You can just basically use a big brush and just go, you know, crazy over there. So last but not the least is the crusted rust deposits. I'm going to be using it in a very specific places. You will see in a second where. You should sort of copy it the same way and use it at the bottom of areas like so. I just put it over there, and I still, again, mix it with the previous paint. It doesn't really matter. It also will give us this natural look of non-uniform colors if it mixes properly, right? But in this case, it just covered the area. So I'm just looking around if I missed anything, but yeah, this is the area. I'm just gonna go over the skulls as well. The other side needs it as well, so I just need to fix it here, there, and do the skulls. Because I haven't sealed it with a varnish, I can still go back, and even if you do, and the only thing that varnish is going to do for you is just separate the layers, so you can clearly work with new pigments and new chemicals. So this is how it looks like after applying all of the paints, all of the pigments. We can now speed up the process by the drying process by using the old trusty hair dryer. Although I wouldn't recommend it, I would prefer you to leave the pigments sit there for half an hour, 45 minutes. This is the best result. I mean, you're gonna get the best results like this, but right, I'm gonna leave this model for drying time, but before that, let's prepare everything that we need to use in the next step. So that's going to be our odorless thinner that we're going to be using to move the pigments around. There's not much in the bottle, but what we've got over there is going to be more than enough for the whole project. So the thinner just basically moves the pigment around with a brush. So let's just clean out the space and move the brushes. Right, so I'm going to use a bigger brush. That's at the bottom is the one that I used, and plenty of ear cleaning buds. I don't know how you call them in England or in English basically, but these are going to be used for flat panels to move the thinner around. Right, so now I've got a thinner opened. This is the paint I'm going to be using, odorless thinner AK049. So I put a little bit in my in the cap, and what I do, I just put the dab the ear thingy into it, and I just clean the skulls. I'm just going to start with the skulls on the other side because that's just going to bring us a quick result straight away. As you can see, some of the paint is moves onto the earbud, and now let's take the brush and just start working with it, working through the whole model with a brush. And as you can see, I'm just firstly watering down, sort of making it wet, and then when it's wet, I move the pigment around. It's very useful to have a cloth nearby. Paper cloth might be, but I prefer you know, like a proper fabric, because it doesn't leave any, you know, things on the brushes, like dust and debris. So I just water it down, make it wet, and move it around slightly, and play with it for a while, and move on to the next panel. I would strongly suggest doing it panel by panel, so you can clearly see the results straight away. Don't be worried that one of the pigments is going to mix with the other. don't worry that you're gonna see brush streaks or some other dirt on the flat surfaces. Somewhat you want that. You want that, you know, random bits of dust here and there. So don't be too pedantic with it. Just play with it, you know, play around basically. So now we move on to the flat panels. As you can see, again, I make the areas wet where I want the paint to be moved from, and I just, you know, move my brush from left to right, up to bottom, top down, you know, any direction that I feel like that I need to move the paint around. For those streaks, obviously this is not coming as perfect as I would like to, but you can always come back with the paint and fix it later on if you need to. But the more you play with it, the more paint you move around, the more natural the result will be. So after we've done with our brush work, we can put the brush away, take our earbud and start cleaning the flat surfaces from any residue that we don't want. As simple as that. Just move it around and it's done. Oh, before I forget, over here we had this little panel that I've overfilled with the pigment on purpose. So now I'm going to show you what the thinner will do when it's wetted, made moist. So basically I just moved it around, and you can basically clean out the whole pigment paint out of the space that you don't want. So after a couple of moves, after a couple of wiggles with a paintbrush, it looks exactly like the one that we wanted on the other side, you know, the same result. So basically what I'm trying to show here is that even if you make a mistake, if you overspill, put a little bit too much, you can always come back and fix your mistakes. And then let's just continue working on the rest of the model, and let's have a look at the final result. As you can see, the results are really great. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you enjoyed this short tutorial, this very basic tutorial. I will say this again, the techniques and the amounts of paint and amounts of pigment that I used are the ones that I've used at the very beginning when I was still learning this method. So this is something that if you have never used pigments before, liquid pigments, enamels and so on, this is how you're gonna do it. This is how this is the way it's gonna look like for you if you follow the steps, if you follow the same materials. On this side I was a little bit more careful, obviously, but nevertheless the result is still awesome, and I cannot praise these materials than I do actually. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Come back next time and have fun, and Happy New Year. Bye.